I want to thank those who have come out to join us this afternoon and to join in this discussion. We believe that it is the community that informs us. As our president, Mr. East, mentioned, that we are primarily a business bank. And as a business bank, we have an opportunity to work with business leaders and also leaders of our communities that are focused on community and economic development. And so therefore we see that there's a very unique opportunity to work with the entrepreneurship community and the small business community in order to engage in deeply rooted community change and economic development. So it'll be very brief. I want to talk about the Community Reinvestment Act very quickly, enacted in 1977 as a requirement of financial institutions to invest, to lend, invest, and provide services in low and moderate income communities where banks are located. Now, we feel that we have an opportunity to go, beyond the statute of the regulation and engage in the spirit of the CRA by, creating ecosystems for economic development. And when I say ecosystems, what I mean by that is by engaging collaboration within the communities, to have these types of dialogues so that we hear from you, so that we understand and really what the community representatives and our local communities are engaged in on a day-to-day basis. So again, I want to thank you for being here, and we look forward to hearing from you and continuing this dialogue. Thank you so much.
All right, great. So now, Dr. Franco, it's your turn. I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Franco. So Dr. Franco is an officer and director of community development finance for the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. There are a lot of initiatives that are on his plate, but specifically there's a strong focus on CRA, on what he's been doing for Puerto Rico to try to attract investment, and just opportunities in general. So Dr. Franco, please.
Good afternoon. Well, first of all, let me say thank you to the organizers. Dan, thanks for your kind introduction. Joanne, you're always an inspiration. Thank you to customer banks, thank you to Medgar Evers College. Since I learned about this event, the fact that two institutions, a bank and a college, were working together, I immediately thought it was the right choice. And I'll talk a little more about that throughout my remarks. But again, thank you so much. It is a true honor to be part of this timely and relevant conversation about opportunity zones. Today, I want to talk about the importance of transparency and community engagement in fostering ecosystems for economic development in opportunity zones, both in distressed communities across the country. I also want to reiterate the New York Fed's commitment to collaborate closely with all stakeholders to achieve this goal, including everyone in this room. The Federal Reserve has a deep commitment to advance the economic resilience and mobility of low and moderate income communities. This focus began with the enactment of the Community Reinvestment Act, the CRA precisely. As one of the regulators of the CRA, we are keenly interested in understanding how financial institutions meet the credit needs of low and moderate income communities, as well as opportunities for investments in community development projects in these areas. Over the years, this mandate has actually evolved to include applied research, different programs, and tools for community organizations to achieve their goals. The New York Fed focuses its community work on some of the most critical socioeconomic challenges faced by the region that we oversee, that encompasses New York State, parts of New Jersey, parts of Connecticut, Puerto Rico, and the US Virgin Islands. Those challenges include some of the ones that were mentioned before by Dick. For example, accessing capital for small businesses, the skills mismatch in the labor force or workforce development, and financial inclusion. The New York Fed also supports the transformation of low and moderate income communities in our region by working to increase the impact of community investments. To achieve this goal, we have a team dedicated to community development finance, as we call it, Codify. Our work in this space includes different programs. We produce what we call resource guidebooks that offer both investors and local leaders accessible data and relevant tools. We also have educational programs to build the capacity of local organizations. And we have a program called Investment Connection that aims to facilitate connection between financial institutions and community organizations and foster the funding of CRA-eligible projects. The Codify team is the one responsible at the New York Fed for the work on opportunity zones. Historical, in terms of the size of the potential capital pool, the Investment Opportunity Act that created the zones aims to channel equity capital into distressed census tracts. The Fed's objective regarding opportunity zones is to maximize the public benefit of this law. To illustrate our work in this space and share some reflections about this important moment in community development finance, let me share with you a brief example I like to call A Tale of Two Opportunity Zones, Port Richmond and St. George. There is an area in Staten Island called Port Richmond. Immigrant families from Mexico and other countries from Latin America have been settling in the vicinity for decades. Like in many other immigrant enclaves in the country, the neighborhood experienced the entrepreneurship of these recent arrived families and many positive developments that these immigrants bring to the country. On the other hand, in order to match the energy and goals of these immigrants, the area was in urgent need for additional social services, better transportation options, affordable childcare, access to financial services, quality housing, more jobs, among other important developments. I became very familiar with Port Richmond because I used to teach immigrant families about personal finance in a community center located there. Unfortunately, Port Richmond has not changed very much in the last few years. According to the Economic Innovation Group, one of the census tracts in Port Richmond that has the designation as a qualified opportunity zone has a poverty rate of 64%. A few miles from Port Richmond, in Staten Island, there is another opportunity zone in the neighborhood of St. George. This is the area that surrounds the ferry station for those who are familiar with the island. Borough Hall and the courts are located there. The residents, some of them who have been in the vicinity for generations, have witnessed how St. George has gentrified in the last years. In addition to being a transportation hub, this neighborhood hosts the stadium of the minor league Yankees. It is developing the tallest building in the world with hundreds of apartments for rent. Hotels are also opening. Restaurants seem to appear every few weeks with mixologists, dessert chefs, and I can assure from personal experience, Manhattan prices. Recently, the local government announced a new ferry route to go directly from St. George to Midtown Manhattan that will attract a lot of professionals to the area. And just last week, the first outlet in New York City was opened in St. George, Empire Outlet. The facility is state-of-the-art with a beautiful view of the Manhattan skyline. In contrast, with a 64% poverty rate in Port Richmond, St. George has a poverty rate of 10%. But it's also, as I said, a qualified opportunity zone. Let me use this data to illustrate some thoughts about opportunity zones. First, not two opportunity zones are completely alike. The Investment Opportunity Act gave governors 90 days only, to designate 25% of census tracts in their states and territories as opportunity zones. State governments took very different approaches to conduct this exercise. Some of them tried to align it with existing regional economic development plans, some others tried to be have proportional representation. Some others we really don't understand what they did. But the point is, it's very difficult to compare opportunity zones in different states. But even within the same state and with the same city or the same borough, as the example illustrates, opportunity zones are not all alike. Second, the intention of this law is to benefit communities like Port Richmond, but it's more likely that it will benefit areas like St. George. I can see opportunity fund managers being more interested and understand better St. George than an area like Port Richmond. Moreover, places like Port Richmond might be worse off after 10 years. Unintended consequences like a race to the bottom between localities to attract capital by providing more tax incentives and tax benefits could negatively affect the prospects of surrounding low-income communities. More investments in St. George also could trigger displacement, and many people might end in Port Richmond, leaving this community even more constrained in terms of resources. Given these considerations, at the Fed, we approach the emergence of opportunity zones with strong interest. Yet, we are grounded by the belief that economic development is much larger than opportunity zones or any one tax benefit or community development program for that matter. This is why we think it is important to have conversations like the one we are having today, where the focus on utilizing opportunity zones is in the context of a broader ecosystem for economic development. I will leave to the panel of experts to discuss the factors and elements of these ecosystems. Joanne already tell us a little bit more about your model. Instead, I will focus the rest of my time here to two key characteristics of effective ecosystems that are well aligned to the work that we are doing at the New York Fed: transparency and community engagement. To foster a successful ecosystem for economic development, you must foster a transparent ecosystem. Transparency means that stakeholders can rely on the common language of data. Reliable and timely data on the demographics of the community, main areas of need, local programs and social services, the economic impact of small businesses and major employers are all essential to have a transparent ecosystem. Another factor that is essential, information about investments in opportunity zones. In partnership with the U.S. Impact Investing Alliance and the Beck Center at Georgetown University, the New York Fed proposed a voluntary reporting framework that advocates for consistent data collection on investment in opportunity zones. We propose that investors report data about their investments, such as target geography, size of the fund, investing thesis, and baseline data on the impact of these projects. For example, number of jobs created or number of housing units built. The framework was published earlier this year with contributions of many organizations, and it can be found on the website ozframework.org. Since its launch, actors in the private, public, and philanthropic sectors have endorsed the framework. The Sorenson Impact Center has announced its intention to adopt the framework to evaluate applications for its Opportunity Zones Catalyst Challenge. In addition, the California State Senate Bill, CASB 315, introduced by Senate Majority Leader, proposed that state capital gains in California may conform with the federal opportunity zone standards only if funds comply with this reporting framework. I must underscore that the reporting framework doesn't expect that investors measure themselves the broad social outcomes of their investments. We ask that they commit to work and share their impact data with entities that have been doing this work for many years, including philanthropies, think tanks, and universities. This consideration takes me to the next point: the importance of engaging with stakeholders that understand the community. No conversation about economic development will be complete without the voice of residents. In this ecosystem, in a successful ecosystem, we not only see the community as benefactors, but as experts in identifying the most impactful investments in their area. Successful ecosystems for economic development must have strong partnerships between the private, public, and non-profit sectors, specifically between community organizations and potential investors. This type of collaboration can facilitate the collection of more accurate data and community needs assessments, help avoid unintended consequences like the ones I mentioned before, and elevate conversations about what is key here, the creation of intergenerational community wealth. For investors, these partnerships help them to evaluate and mitigate risk of their investments. It is not surprising that one of the first movers interested in investing opportunity zones have been banks, in particular their CRA units. Due to their CRA compliance obligations, banks have a long history of collaborating with community organizations and local leaders in low and moderate income communities. Today, we just heard some of the fantastic collaborations most banks are having with many stakeholders in the community. Banks understand the importance of the ecosystem well and have utilized local partners like CDFIs and other community organizations to identify opportunities and channel a significant amount of investment throughout the years. Another key actor in successful ecosystems is local universities and colleges. They are uniquely positioned to serve as liaison between investors and communities, given their strong partnerships with local actors. For some communities, universities have an outsized role in boosting local development. They are often one of the largest employers and hold significant economic influence throughout endowments, real estate assets, and contracts with small business in the region. Increasingly, higher education institutions, in recognizing their position as an anchor for the community, are institutionalizing their commitment to the community by embedding community service and engagement in their mission statement and their strategic plans. It is more likely that you will find these partnerships and anchor institutions in places like St. George than Port Richmond. This is why the New York Fed and the San Francisco Fed are developing an additional resource that complements the reporting framework I mentioned before. We call it a community toolkit for opportunity zones. The intention behind the community toolkit is not to offer a unilateral solution for communities and neighbors that are inherently different from one another. Rather, we want to be able to offer a resource that can empower communities to determine their own priorities, define their desired outcomes, and utilize capital to manage investment activities towards those outcomes. The toolkit will include examples of projects that include equity investments and have fostered equitable growth. We will also provide a list of existing analytical tools that will track social impact throughout the life of the investment. It is our hope that with the help of the toolkit, we will enable communities to clearly articulate the investment opportunities where the financial and social returns are optimal. It is mutually beneficial when communities develop this ability. It sets clear goals around which communities can build a strategy, and it adds market intelligence for investors that can be used to maximize stakeholders' value. Earlier, I described a tale of two opportunity zones for Richmond and St. George. This theme, obviously, I borrowed from the acclaimed novel by Charles Dickens. Let me conclude now with a quote from that famous work. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. I mention this quote because the creation of opportunity zones gives everyone, community to community development finance, and everyone in this room, a chance to rethink our approach. We are all aware of the dire socioeconomic challenges that underserved communities across the nation are facing. We must take advantage of this historical tax benefit to discuss how to create ecosystems for economic development that advance the economic resilience and mobility of underserved households and avoid unintended consequences. Together, we may make it the best of times by dedicating ourselves to building wealth and long-term assets in our communities. Again, I want to express my gratitude for your invitation and recognize you for encouraging this important discussion about the development of ecosystems for economic development. And I want to re-emphasize the New York Fed's commitment to support you in this critical goal. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take any questions. If do we have time, Dan? Are you ready? Maybe we don't. If we don't, it's okay. One? Okay, we have one question. We have time for one question. And yes, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Hi, James Williams, Nanotronics. We're actually a qualified opportunity zone business, and we're looking into funds to invest in other opportunity zone businesses. We're also affiliated with Medgar Evers College. Now we started the EART program, which is another incentive. So, just on that, I want to know how much you're actually hearing about the investment in operating businesses versus real estate, and how fast you believe some of those funds can be deployed instead of the 30-month test on the substantial improvement.
So most of the conversation since last year was around real estate, and I think the reason was that we didn't have the regulations, clarity from regulations in operating businesses. There was a lot of questions from investors about many technical aspects. The second tranche of regulations that came this year clarified many of those points. My conversation with some investors that they feel more comfortable now with that, although they still would like to know some specifics. So I will say most of the conversation has been in real estate, but you start listening more and more interest in operating business. Now, I also want to say that was the original spirit of the deal. It was jobs. Cory Booker, Tim Scott, when they worked with the Economic Innovation Group, it was about small business and jobs. So I think that there's going to be a lot of interest and a lot of developments in the next coming months.
Thank you.
Is that it, Dan? That's okay. Thank you again, everyone.